Hello everybody and welcome back to another video here on my channel. Another very exciting video and also I think episode 3 of my Read It or Unhaul It series, and I'm so excited to do this video. We have about 2 days left, today and tomorrow of December. So we are at the very end of 2025. I don't think I'm going to finish another book. Well, I am going to kind of finish a book. I have about 100 or so pages left of one specific book, but honestly I've been thinking probably the very beginning of DNFing that book, and I've read I think 2 different books in the course of me trying to read this one book, and I told myself no matter what, I'm going to end out 2025. I'm going to finish that book by the end of the year, whether that's me finishing the last 100 pages in the next 2 days, or if that's me just DNFing the book. So instead of actually tackling that book, why don't we do a whole nother video and start a whole nother book? Because this totally makes sense, but that's okay. I just kind of want to do a Read It or Unhaul It to start off the year, and I feel like this would be a really cool, hopefully, way to dive into 2026. Hopefully have a better reading year, and last year was not bad, even though we started the year off really bad, and also our final book of the year is going to be really bad. Besides those two, I feel like overall my reading year was not bad. So let's go ahead and see what book I pulled today. Alright, I just refreshed this jar, so I do have my physical TBR for the most part, and then also I have a few books that I pulled out that I already read. I think like 5 or 6 books, because I haven't touched this in multiple months, but more so because I just revamped it I think at the beginning of December, and I read I think almost 10 whole books. If I can finish that one book, I've read 10 whole books in the month of December, so I had a lot to pull out from here, which is great. Some of them are staying in because there's the first book and then it says in parentheses or next of a series, so hopefully we get one that also I can use an audiobook with, because I want to clean the house. I have some stuff I really need to do. I have to go take down the trash. I'm just in the mood to start a book and also listen to it just for a little bit. So let's kind of dig around for one. All right, I think I have just one. Nope, I have 2. This one's a small one, which means this is one that I just put on my TBR because I had to handwrite a couple, or not necessarily that I just put on my TBR, but I just put in a jar. So we have Under the Dome. I think I have an audiobook for this on Libby, which is perfect because I wasn't sure if I wanted to start the book that I ended up starting that I don't actually like, and I considered with a couple Stephen King ones, and I'm pretty sure I just got this one. I do actually. 34 hours. This is gonna be a long video. Honestly though, Under the Dome I feel like is a great one for this. I don't think I've had a Stephen King reading vlog either, or let alone a Read It or Unhaul It. I think I've only done, like I said, 3 of these, so this one's going to be really interesting and I'm actually really excited. Let me grab my book, the copy that I do have. Alright, this is a fairly chunky book. I've read a few of his books, The Stand being the longest. It was like 1148 pages, or at least the copy that I have. This one is over 1,000 pages too. We are starting the year off on a very crazy note. This is 1,043 pages, so about 100 pages less than The Stand. Also, it's huge compared to The Stand, which is by me. It's the same version where it's like really floppy, but it's just a massive paperback compared to The Stand. I think it's like a normal size paperback. So this is fairly chunky, fairly big. I have watched, I think, like the whole first season of Under the Dome when they first came out, when Amazon Prime was just transitioning into like movies and stuff, but also I think it was like around the early 2000s. You didn't have to pay, you paid for Prime and you got all these movies and stuff for free, and I sat on my mom's Kindle at the time and watched that series, and I did enjoy it for the most part, at least how many episodes I've seen, but I never thought about reading the book. And then I happened to see this at the library for sale, and honestly because it was Christmas, they said we're not going to charge you $1.50, because I also had this book for 50 cents and then a hardcover for $1, and they told me they weren't going to charge me because the sale, Christmas sale that they had was fill a bag for a whole entire $1. So they're like, we're not going to make you pay $1.50 for 2 books when we can make you pay $1 for a whole giant bag. So instead they just gave it to me for free and said Merry Christmas. So I didn't pay anything for this, and yeah, I'm very interested about this because I've heard great things about this and I like the cover. I know this is a newer one, revamped and more so like the movie. I feel like this is going to be a really interesting read, and I feel like it's going to be so nice to tackle a Stephen King book at the very beginning of the year where I'm not trying to accomplish and finish the goals that I have set for that specific year. I can just go straight into my TBR, my physical TBR, and just read whatever I want to read. Or if I happen to do like this video and I get chosen to read a certain book, I can just read it and not stress. So we are going to start Under the Dome, and then I will probably start with the audiobook since I can get my hands on it, and then I will go start cleaning and I will come back to you later. Alright, I want to give a little bit of my first thoughts on Under the Dome and kind of update a little bit. First off, there are a few things that I kind of remember, at least from my memory, kind of coincide with the TV show, so I feel like they did good. I think overall this is going to be totally different, or for the most part there are going to be a lot of things that are very different from the TV show. However, I do like how we start off, and in a way you get like the classic Stephen King vibes, I'm gonna say, where you're following also a woodchuck. You're following somebody in an airplane, and then you're also following a woodchuck. Now, is it kind of grotesque and like gory in a way? Of course, it's Stephen King. The biggest, not necessarily complaint, but thing that I totally forgot about because it's been a while, I think The Stand, which was October of last year, was the last book that I actually read from Stephen King, so it's been over a year. I think technically like a year and 2 months. And I totally forgot about how, yes, he's grotesque, that's a little bit fine, but he's also very vulgar. And sometimes with the vulgar, I'm not just talking like bad words or like some of the things that are said, especially for me, the GDs, if you know what I mean, you know. I'm really not big on that. And with hearing it with an audiobook, I feel like it's a lot worse. But the other parts is vulgar towards certain situations and also more so females, and I feel like I'm gonna sound very like feminist or whatever, and I'm not necessarily meaning that. I just kind of forgot of some of the words that he loves to say and how he phrases certain things, which I get it, he's a lot older, like he grew up, I don't remember if he was born in like the 50s, 60s, but he also definitely grew up during the 70s and 80s. So I understand some of his language, but at the same time I'm like, just terrible words. And also there is a spot in this where you get this dynamic or this little POV, and you're following this person, and he apparently has like a brain tumor or something, and he gets really annoyed about this one girl because of her teeth. I just don't know, like the way he was describing the teeth for me, and just why, what was the reason for this? Why in your mind did you come up with this? And I was in the process of taking the trash down, so we have like 0.6 of a mile drive, so I'm sitting there walking, listening, and all I can hear is everything going on in that scene as I'm taking the trash down, and I'm like, what is going on right now? How did we get from the very beginning to then all of a sudden this part? How are we here? So far though, I made a very decent chunk. I mean, I'm only like 11% into the book, which is fairly decent considering it is over 1,000 pages. I think I listened to the audiobook for 2 hours and 33 minutes, give or take. I was not expecting to listen to it that long. I definitely cleaned the whole entire house. Everything smells good, everything's pretty much clean. I do want to go eat. It is about 2:40, so it is fairly late, and I am a little bit hungry, and maybe I'll just sit and relax and play The Sims or do something else for the rest of the day until my husband comes home. However, I am to page 118. I'm not going to say what chapter I'm on because there's multiple like subsections in a way, and then within those there's chapters, but Stephen King doesn't do like actual chapters. He just kind of has like 1, 2, and it's more so also you're reading and then here's the next section or the next chapter. I don't know if I'm on like chapter 48 because fairly, for the most part, I feel like the chapters are fairly short, and I am very much into this book. I'm hoping it will be better than my time reading The Stand, because that one I feel like I was just a little discouraged, especially because of how it ended. But I did like that book, but I think I like it better now hearing everybody's reviews and takes, and also how they kind of break down The Stand. I think I understand it more now, so I could give it more of a justified 4.5 star. When I first rated it that, it was like, oh, I dedicated an entire month to read this book. I feel like I'm obligated to rate it 4.5 stars, whichever I did, and that was not necessarily the case. But this book, I feel like so far we're on the track that I'm not necessarily bored with it. I feel like I could hop into it and physically read it, and probably, I don't know how fast, but probably definitely read like 100 pages and feel like I've accomplished a lot, even if that 100 pages is not even another 10%. I feel like for a first update, this isn't too bad. I got pretty decent chunk into it, but I did listen to majority, if not all of it, only on audiobook, which is kind of sad, and I'm so sorry. Hello everybody, it's been a few days and I'm here to do a little update on Under the Dome. I have read just a little bit. I have no clue what I last left off when I last updated you. If I was around like 100 or so pages, or if I was past 100, but I am currently on 280, 281, that's where I stopped, and it's a new day, new morning, so I will be reading this eventually later. But yesterday I feel like I tackled a bunch of it, and I think I basically read about 100 across the day or so, so that was a big accomplishment. You would never know looking at it. 300 pages into it is fine finally making a big dent in my mind, or at least a decent sized dent. And there are parts of this that I do want to talk about, so there will be a spoiler section at the very end of this video. I like to sometimes include spoiler sections, but more so at the end, so if you're not looking for spoilers, you don't have to skip throughout the entire video multiple different times. You can just go straight through this video, and then if you don't want spoilers, just end out the video and don't watch the spoilers. I have to talk about a few things because there are a few things that I definitely want to mention, or just kind of not vent, but just talk about. So far I've been enjoying this book a lot. I've also just been kind of gathering information, just reading it, taking it day by day, not really putting much thought into it. Started doing that, I feel like, at the very last month, or give or take a couple months of 2025. I was just going into books and not really having too much thought process with them, or certain books, and that's what I'm doing with this because it is such a large book that I feel like if I think too much on it, I might get a little bit discouraged because it's almost like it's the new year. I should be reading like 10 books this month, you know, going all out just because it's the first month of the year. However, I chose to pick one of the biggest, if not the biggest book sitting on my physical TBR for this video. So of course it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to take probably half the month, and it is, I think, day 5. No, it's only the 3rd. That's the other thing too. I keep thinking we are farther in January than we really are, and it's only January 3rd. In my mind, I feel like we're almost to the 10th. This month's kind of starting to go by really slow, even though I feel like this entire past year went by super fast. I feel like for the most part in the non-spoiler section, I don't have too much to update on because it's just kind of, I'm reading it, I'm taking it day by day. You still have the dome that came down, and they're trying to figure out if this was more like a terrorist attack in a way, like something that was planned by the government or somebody else, or something that just somehow happened. A lot of people also think that maybe it's because of their sin and it was like what God chose to do, but there were some other things that people kind of talked about, let's just say, about a generator maybe providing the source, and it somehow is like an electromagnetic field or something. And they say it's a dome, but then also they're not positive if it's closed at the top. They haven't necessarily tried, but they were going to also destroy the dome, at least the military side, or the Marines technically, I think they were. But yeah, that's pretty much all that's really been going on. We get a lot more of the character, little bits and pieces of the characters, and we have a lot of characters. I think about like 5 or 6 that we're following in a way, but it's not really frustrating. Stephen King does a really good job when he's gonna have 10 to 20 characters. He's gonna do a good job at keeping them pretty easy to know who's who and not get them too like mixed up in your brain, because I know once you start dealing with a lot of characters, it's really hard, and sometimes it's really easy to just want to quit the book for that. And I feel like the characters that we're following, I'm really enjoying reading about. Well, a couple of them. You do have a couple that it's like, no, I hate this character, I hate what they're doing, but I get it. Like, especially for a Stephen King book, I understand why he made a character like this, because it plays onto the horror side, or it plays onto the weird Stephen King side. So I totally understand, and I really like Big Jim, following him right now because I like his like bad guy, I'm gonna say, dynamic, and then I want to know more information about him. And I feel like the stuff that we've been given, I've been storing it in my brain and keeping it for later. And then of course there is Barbara or Barbie, and then my name, Julia. There's those two, which we are also following, and I don't mind them, I do enjoy, but I feel like for some reason I just want to know more information about Big Jim, and I know we're gonna get a lot more information about him later. That's really all I have to update for this section. I just am, like I said, taking it day by day, trying to tackle as many pages as I can, but I'm gonna try not to get discouraged. That's gonna be the biggest thing. Hello everybody, good morning. It's been a very long time since I last updated, and I do believe I was around 200, maybe 300 pages. However, I have read a lot of the book, a very big chunk of the book, but I've also been sick. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but I've also been sick for a couple days, and I didn't read as much while being sick. I'd say like 4 days. I had whatever my son had, and then my husband had, I think a week later, and now a week later after that, I ended up getting it, and I'm still kind of getting over it. I still have that sick taste in my mouth, so I haven't really recorded. I haven't updated update you guys. I don't have too much to update in like things that I want to talk about because I feel like everything we're just kind of continuing on what we already had from the beginning of the book, or at least when I last updated. But at the same time, it is like I could give you full spoilers. So I will put some stuff in the spoiler section because I do believe I started one. However, I think like I said, we were like 300 pages into it. Now I'm on the opposite side of the book. So I've read a good portion of this book. I'm actually on page 798. So I'm almost to page 800. We have less than 300 pages actually. So I'm very close to finishing this book and I'm so excited about that. And I feel like the things that I can update, like I said, we're just kind of continuing on. So there are some things from the very beginning when the dome dropped down. Certain characters, they did some things, made some decisions. Getting farther into that where we're seeing some more of that play out. Some people are in jail. Some people are letting the true monopoly of the town take over. Some people are just completely stricken with fear. And I really like how Stephen King has written this book. I'm very entertained. I am sad that I feel like I'm just ready for it to be done. I'm enjoying this book a lot, but I'm ready to not be reading this book. I want to move on from this book. It is one of those that I feel like I've been reading it for a very long time. It has been a couple weeks, but just it's one of those big challenges. You know, 1,000-page book, it's a big challenge and I'm so close to the end, so I have more of that motivation again. Definitely when I was around the 500 or so page mark, I was like, I'm not even fully 50% of the way through because I was at 500 and something pages. And when I put it into Fable with my specific page count that I have for this book, it told me I was 49% of the way through. And I was just so upset. I was like, I'm not even 50% through this book. I have so much left. Really, I feel like there's not too much. I am very much enjoying this. Like I love actually hopping in, reading. I have been both physical reading and listening to the audiobook. I've also been trying to pick up this book every once in a while when I can. A good example is like yesterday, we went out to Texas Roadhouse with our family. On the way there, on the way back, I had my book layup and I was reading this in the truck. But when I was getting ready, I also spent maybe like 20 minutes if so listening to the audiobook, so I maybe got 10 pages more into the book. So I think technically every little thing that I do is definitely helping me. Every time I go into it, I'm really excited. I don't want to necessarily stop reading, and even though it's such a big book, I still feel the need to try and take it with me when we go places. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to talk, to be honest, but yeah, there's not too much. I do want to go into the spoiler section and talk more about some spoilers, but I'm just still enjoying it a lot. I just definitely know towards the middle, I'd say from like 30% to maybe even 60%, I was just feeling very discouraged. I guess discouraged is a better word. I was feeling discouraged to continue because I just was feeling that almost burnout feeling. But now I'm so close to the end that I'm so excited. I definitely want to finish it. And my hopes were to finish it between the 10th and the 15th. It is now the 11th today, so I should be finishing it hopefully in the next couple days. I hope before the 15th, to be honest. But I just wanted to update, say I'm almost 800 pages in. We have less than 300 pages, and I've also been sick, so I'm so sorry. I have not been actually updating this vlog. I felt really bad about that. I have tried to kind of record, but then I also have not, so threw in some extra videos, so to say. Hello, good morning. It is the next day. I want to do potentially a final update. Well, not a final update, but an update before I finish Under the Dome potentially. Yesterday, I don't remember what I said we started at. I think it was like 794, and I read just a little bit more. I'm on 894, so basically 100 pages, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk too much. But I also forgot to kind of update about, there was this whole, I'm gonna say like under the table type operation or like secret meeting and other things going on. I totally forgot to mention in this book, and I was very excited because we were getting to the leading up to the parts of this happening at this certain town meeting. 2 people were gonna potentially get, let's just say like helped. I don't want to spoil too much of what happens, but they were gonna go get helped, and then I don't know, there was gonna be more to that. And when we were going through that town meeting and what happened at the other location, which is where kind of the cops had been staying, we had where Junior, the son of Big Jim who's like the monopoly of the town, he's actually went there after one person and he was planning to kill him, and there was multiple other people too involved. There were a couple times that some people died, and then there was one person in particular that I was thinking, well, I guess 2 people in particular that I was like, I hope Stephen King does not end this, but more so I figured the one would live no matter what. And then we got to the second one and I was like, I really hope Stephen King does not kill him. Like, I'm not really ready to hear about how he's potentially gonna die. Thankfully we kind of move on, and I wasn't wrong. He didn't kill him. There is other people that the guy killed. I don't know, I just felt like at that moment when we were there and I was listening and reading about this happening, I was so invested. And I read about 100 pages yesterday, give or take, maybe right under 100, but I think I only have like 180 pages left. I've just just under 200 pages, and then I will be officially done with this book, and I am very excited about that. I'm not gonna lie. Let me not talk too much because I know my voice is probably really annoying, and yesterday I just had a really bad day with being sick. I had a pounding headache where I felt like my eye, especially this eye, was about to pop out of my socket. A character feels with a brain tumor. I felt like how Stephen King was describing that, except for it was me just being sick, and my brain just felt like it was swollen and trying to push out like right up here and all right here, and I felt like I had a migraine without having a true migraine. So hopefully today is better. I do plan on, I'd say like 50 or more pages through this book because I really want to finish it today, if not tomorrow. More so probably tomorrow, but I don't know. I've been very invested, which is helping a lot. We're not going to talk about how exactly I look. I do want to come on here and tell you that I did listen to most of this on audiobook, I feel like, but I have finished Under the Dome, and I want to kind of give my thoughts, my update, and my rating. First of all, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I rated this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, but I also can see where others have felt the same way. I was a little confused about the ending because I thought for a second I had misread, or I just wasn't processing or something, and I was like, wait a minute, how is this going on? How is this happening right now? And looking at some other reviews, reading through, and then also looking at some like shorts on YouTube and some other videos here on YouTube, I found I was not the only one who thought there was something about that ending. I don't want to spoil it. And I think I stated in the very beginning of this video that Stephen King sometimes just does not do well with ending his books. Sometimes he doesn't do well with writing them, or he doesn't want to end them, so he just kind of throws in an ending, or it's like a you choose your own type ending. And I figured it was either going to be a you choose your own type ending, or it would just leave me with a bunch of questions. And it left me more with a bunch of questions. Like, I'm not fully upset with the ending. I think if I kind of make up my own thing in a way to go along with how the ending was, then my questions can be answered. But at the same time, it's like I just was a little bit confused because there's still a whole big giant question that I don't necessarily want to talk about here, but I'll put into the spoiler section that is like on my mind. I also seen where some people were talking about how this book was mainly just a character book, like we're following specific characters, and there is like an antagonist, and he does kind of stand out above some other bad people, and he is like the main antagonist, and then we have one technically main protagonist, but he doesn't stand out as much as a protagonist away from all the other people, or like good people, kind of similar to like how the antagonist does. I seen where some people were saying this is more so just Stephen King, he was writing about this character, about the story, or like multiple characters, multiple stories, multiple past. Under the Dome, how kind of in a way a town, how quickly they can fall, turn on each other, blah blah blah, all that type of stuff. And then he's like, oh, let me just go ahead and end it here, and then he threw in an ending. And it's not that I can agree with that or disagree, like I can see a part of that because some of those reviews I felt like were true, especially with the confusion if it's just me or not with this ending. And I know a lot of his books too are more like interconnected. If you read The Dark Tower, a lot of his books will start to make more sense, and I've never read that. I've only read The Stand and Christine like fully through, so this is my third book now that I've read from him. And I don't think it's also one, maybe potentially it is one that I need to have read The Dark Tower, or at least have a basis of that series to understand more of what's going on in here, which maybe one day, but I don't think I'll really ever get to that. I think 4.5 stars, it was really good, especially for the time that I took reading it. It was almost 2 full weeks. It was 1,072 pages. I really enjoyed a lot of the characters. A lot of the characters, they came to a conclusion. They had their own conclusion at the end. Like their problems were kind of resolved to a point, whether that be like they actually were resolved, pros and cons, this thing actually happened to them, or if it's just they resolved by death, they were killed off. And that's the other thing with Stephen King, is I do enjoy how sometimes he kills off his characters. I don't always like not having characters killed off, and I feel like it gives us more of like makes you more into the book in a way. And I also really like the problems that we were facing, not just the dome, but there were some other things with like the brain tumor, drug schemes, we had like stealing going on, on. We had people coming in. There were some things that I didn't like that Stephen King loves to write about, like some things specifically just like sexual stuff that I just don't like. But I mean, it is Stephen King, so you just kind of read it and move on because he loves to add those into his books. So there were some things that I didn't like, but I felt like a lot of the things I really liked. A lot of his characters, I felt like he did really good on making his characters, making them have issues. Some of them even had family members outside the dome. And there were some events that I thought, like Visiting Day, I'm just gonna say, I thought was gonna be more of a story, something we would read into, and then we just didn't get to that. But at the same time, I could see why we didn't, and it was because there was other things going on at the same time as this Visiting Day thing going on. I'm not really upset about this book. I'm glad I tackled it. It is very chunky, so I do recommend it. But if you have more so the mindset going into it that it's gonna take you a while, maybe if you buddy read it like with somebody, or if you did 2 books at one and you kind of read this taking your time and then also read something else to kind of help you read, or like if you're feeling like you're in a slump, you could pick up that second book, that type of situation. I think if you're a person who's really expecting a super amazing book to the top point of like it's gonna have amazing ending, you're gonna feel so good walking away from it, no questions asked, maybe not pick it up. Maybe it's also just me, like I said, if it's something to do with the Dark Tower, maybe I just don't understand because I haven't read enough. But I think since I've read enough reviews, it's not just me, it's just how Stephen King kind of ended the book. But I definitely think it's worth it if you can get through, because it is such a long book. It is definitely something that you have to kind of dedicate your time to. Even though I'm upset about the ending, I think 4.5 stars was really good. Like the feelings I feel about this book, even with the bad ending, I felt like the rest of the book made up for that, in my personal opinion. Like I really enjoyed the characters and I really enjoyed the story that I was reading, and I felt like some things just at certain points were just happening nonstop, like super fast, and maybe that's also why I'm confused. Maybe I got some information mixed up in my head. If you can tackle something like this, I would recommend. If not, then it's not for you. That's fine. Totally move on and do something else with your life. Go read a different book that would definitely suit you better, because this was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting, and if it wasn't for a Read It or Unhaul It, I don't think I would have tackled it just yet. Thankfully, I did tackle it at the beginning of the year, and I kind of was sick, so it kind of helped out, and I was able to kind of read more. It still took me like 2 weeks to read, and that was listening to an audiobook on like 1.4 times speed. It took a long time. It's like a 34-hour long audiobook, I do believe. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed this Read It or Unhaul It. I have done a couple of these videos in the past, so if you're curious, go ahead and click back on the playlist I have down in the description or at the end of this video, and you can look back at those videos because I feel like I have a couple of unique books for these Read It or Unhaul It's. If you're staying for the spoiler section, good luck. I have no clue exactly what all I'm putting into it. I don't know how long it's going to be, but thank you so much. I hope to see you all in another video here on my channel, and as always, God bless. All right, real quick, hopping into our first set of spoilers for Under the Dome. I want to talk about, oh, what's his name? I know it's Junior is what we call him, but I cannot remember his actual name, and I do believe it's Big Jim's son. So Big Jim is like this person who runs the town. He's basically got a monopoly. He also is kind of like on the side bribing people in different ways that they need it. Like one girl, I think she's on the community board or whatever's in session when they're voting on stuff. So she is, I think it's oxycodone. I don't know if I can say that, but basically she's been taking oxy for a couple discs that she had either taken out or they fractured or something in her spine, and then it went from like 4 grams or 40 grams all the way up to like 400 grams. And so he's trying to bribe her, and he's like, I'll give you an extra 100 grams. Even though we are on like limited supply, I will give you an extra 100 grams a day if you do this, or if you don't say this. We're getting that little like bad character vibe from him, some of the things he's done. And then his son is not much better. His son is the one person that I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is the side of Stephen King that I'm like, sometimes I don't feel like I can listen to. So the first thing that we have is he ended up killing 2 girls. One girl, I think both girls he went to school with, but one girl I know for sure he was in school with at a really young age. And I was taking down the trash at the time, went over to her house, and I don't remember the exact reasoning why he went over there, but it led to him basically killing her because he has brain tumors, doesn't know about it, and he had this crazy migraine. And then something like tipped him over the edge, and he also talked about her front teeth, or her teeth in general, that he hated them. And then Stephen King went in detail about how much he hated these teeth, like how much they annoyed him, to the point of he literally killed her. And then you also have another girl who came over who lost her mom in the first accident, where I said it's like an airplane in the woodchuck. She lost her mom, so she's going over to her friend's house to kind of like talk and vent, and she was out all night partying and doing drugs and stuff. So she smells really bad. She's probably still intoxicated a little bit. And when she comes over, he was in the middle of cleaning up his first murder like scene and stuff like that. So he's trying to clean the kitchen. There were some things inside of there that I was like, Stephen King, you did not have to write about. Like, there are some things that you wrote about and it wasn't like the aspect of killing, it's like, well, I'll just say like the body underneath the robe that she was wearing type stuff that he was putting in there. It's just one of those that I would never thought to talk about that because it's kind of gross, but I don't know, he's got different morals than me. And then this girl comes over and he ends up killing her too because basically she just walked in on a murder in a way. So he then stuffs both of them in that family pantry of the first girl, like that family house. And at the same time, I think it's like a couple days later, or maybe it's just one day, but it's like 200 pages later, he goes back in there and it's dark in there and he ends up turning off the light because he doesn't like the smell. But when he focuses on like the coffee smell and other smells inside of the pantry, he keeps saying it's not too bad. And then he's talking to these two dead girls and he's doing stuff with their hands and things like that. And I'm like, Stephen King, you are crossing a very big moral line. And I don't know how he wrote about this, and I felt like I needed to kind of talk about it in a spoiler because it's like, why did you write this? Also, I don't remember the exact word for it. Like, they have a term for that, and it's like a really, like, it's illegal for one, and it's just immorally wrong and gross. But there's a certain term, messing around with dead bodies, I'll say, even if it's not fully messing around, a little bit, in my opinion, is still messing around, you know? Another thing I really like is the chief of police that actually was older, and he had his pacemaker explode when he touched the dome. He had a file on his computer that was locked, and I guess he was kind of investigating in his own way. Big Jim. Love this situation with Big Jim in my mind, at least for right now, because I like having the behind the stories. Like, we have another plot, and it's of this guy who has this monopoly, and he has all these other things like the pharmacy, and I think he owns like a grocery store or something. He owns multiple different places, and he's also on the committee, or he's like the person in charge. You have this chief of police who is in his way investigating this guy who doesn't necessarily want to be investigated, doesn't want to be sought out, and doesn't want to be basically found out at the same time. And then he ends up dying, and his wife finds the files. She's talking to both the reporter girl and also the guy who we learn he's an ex-soldier, and his name is Barbie, and her name, the reporter's name, is Julia, and I think the wife's name was Barbara, if I do remember correctly. And so right now I like how every once in a while you get a little bit of them all three together, and they're kind of like talking to each other, going over some details. And I hope in the future we get a bunch more. I hope nothing happens to Barbara, but you never know because she is an older character. I'm very intrigued about with the dome, if it is fully a dome, because right now the military is not sure. I'm gonna assume because it is under the dome, it's going to be a legit dome. I'm very intrigued when we get to halfway to 75%. I want to know if people start running out of supplies, and if it kind of is like The Stand where people start turning on each other, just do or die, if they somehow get supplies shipped in, if they somehow dig under the dome. I have a lot of questions, I have a lot of theories. I don't remember ever finishing the TV show, so for me, besides the first like couple episodes of the dome coming down and some of the things that happen, I know nothing. Like right now as I'm reading, nothing is familiar. It hasn't been familiar for the last 100 or so pages, so I feel like I'm going into this book completely blind right now, and I'm here for it. I'm enjoying it. That is everything I have to updates for the spoiler section, being just about 280 pages into Under the Dome. Real quick, I want to hop in because I went from being around 200, or I'd say 300 pages all the way to almost 800 pages into this book, and I haven't really updated too much. And more specifically, I want to add more spoilers. So with talking about Under the Dome, we are to the point right now where we have Barbie and also Rusty sitting down in jail. We have Jackie kicked off, which is Rusty's wife, kicked off of the police department, I'm gonna say. She's no longer a cop, and she's also secretly going behind the scenes with, I can't remember her name, but she's the person from the cafe where Barbie worked, and I think a couple other people. They are people who know that Big Jim is not necessarily who Big Jim says he is, and he's also got the secret. Needless to say, also, I think I already kind of updated, but Big Jim has a secret, and he's basically monopolized the entire town. He's got like the biggest drug situation in there. He makes drugs, sells them, blah blah blah. We are also to the point where it's been, I think, just about a week or so under the dome, and they have no clue what exactly caused the dome. Like on the outside, they've tried a missile, they've tried some acid that they've had. Nothing's worked to cut through the dome. But then also we got to the point where Rusty, before he went to jail and stuff, he was out with these kids who's had attack or like a radiation thing, and they were reading it, and they went to this place where the radiation was really high, and he decided he was going to go in. So he had some stuff that covered him in certain areas, and then he went into the spot. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if it was because I was super sick when I read that. I don't think I really understood what was going on, because in my mind I did not follow it at all. He apparently found like this box that he couldn't lift up, and then I guess he seeing aliens or something that made him hallucinate, or at the same time I felt like I was hallucinating because my fever was really high. I don't know if I was messing that up. I have no clue what happened in the woods. I'm just kind of ignoring it and moving on past that. I'm sure I'll come back to it and it'll make more sense later. I know that Stephen King has one book in particular that is alien based, but I don't think Stephen King's more of a alien person, if that makes sense. So I don't know if he's gonna go the route of the dome is supernatural like that, or if it is something man-made. But I do also think that Stephen King is going to make this to where we get to the final page, we are still under the dome, we don't know a way out, and also we then have to make up our own ending, like most of his books. I hate to say that, but he really has a lot of books that are choose your own ending per se. Big Jim originally killed the pastor, Coggins, I do believe his name was, and then his son killed 2 females, 2 girls, and then also with Coggins and them, Big Jim killed Brenda. She had files on Big Jim, and also she thought she was maybe safe going to him, and he ended up killing her. And then the other files she dropped off with Andrea, who was also a selectman, but she was getting over, I think she took oxy, and so she just cold turkeyed it. She was over at her house fighting for her life. Brenda went over there, dropped off those papers. They slipped in between the couch and an end table, totally forgotten, but we will probably get to them later on in the story. We also got to where, I'm just gonna say, something happened with Sammy, Stephen King type style, more adult, let's just say, with multiple people, and she ended up having to go to the hospital. I think her son is still alive, and she ended up killing 2 of the people and then killing herself. There are, I feel like, a lot of characters that I not necessarily have been rooting for, but like with Brenda, I actually really enjoyed, and I really liked how Stephen King wrote them, and then he killed them off. I mean, I'm totally fine with that. I think it makes it really interesting, but I definitely don't know how this book is going to end, and I feel like there has been a lot of things going on, but not things really, like we've been progressing, yes, and I have a lot of spoilers I could give, but at the same time, we haven't really had things that I could give the non-spoiler section too much. I think that's all my spoilers I really want to talk about. Those are the main ones that are really sticking out to me. Oh, and Piper. I do remember the other pastor, she said something about she has like this anger issue and her dad always told her to control it, and then she ended up, because she found out about Sammy, that's what I was getting into, because of Sammy, she found out what all happened with her, and then she went up to the guys. Her dog actually attacked one of them when they pushed her down the steps. They shot her dog, or one of the actual police chiefs shot her dog, and now I don't remember what she's actually doing right now, but I know she's probably on Barbie's side, and I'm gonna say side even though there aren't technically sides. There's been a lot of things, and also I really like the character Colonel Cox. I like his character a lot. He's very funny and very fitting, but there's some things that Stephen King has written about that I'm like, this is not factual. For the military side, this is not factual, especially with like the BDUs and how his name is displayed. That's not factual. I will potentially see you guys again some other time. Yesterday I didn't remember to update about like what was going on, what was planned during the town meeting to also go and try and break Barbie out of jail, and then it became Rusty out of jail as well. And during that little situation when Junior went down there, I was really thinking that Rusty was potentially gonna get shot, and I'm so thankful that he didn't get shot. I like him as a character. I knew Barbie wouldn't, like, well, I figured he might have gotten like shot, but he wasn't gonna get killed. I figured Stephen King wouldn't kill him off just yet, if not at all. But with Rusty, I was like, oh, he's kind of expendable. I feel like Stephen King could kind of throw him out and get a new character to replace him, or since we're this far into the book, he could throw him out and that would be it. And I didn't want him to die, so I'm very thankful that after Junior was killed, it was one of those where it was like Rusty and Barbie were okay, and then they actually got out. And so I feel like right now with what's going on, we have a lot more, not necessarily like high stakes, but more potential to have more people die that I kind of like, because there's a lot of characters like Jackie and some other characters that I just am kind of hoping they make it to the end. And Julia, I think she's a decent character for the most part, since Brenda already got killed. And there's a couple other ones that when they died, I was like, I don't remember exactly who they were, and then I had to remember they were just a part of the force, or they were a little bit like in the background. And also during Junior's little like, oh well, Barbie poisoned me, and then my dad was on it, he had me go get the dog tags, he knew that they were poisoned. This whole situation, I kind of actually enjoyed reading how he was trying to figure things out, or like he thought he was figuring things out, and then his mind was making him believe like he was almost like paranoid to the point of everybody was out to get him, and then it made him want to go kill people. I kind of like that dynamic of that character. I felt like Stephen King did a really good job on that. I know it's a little bit different, I'll just say, like it's not the best, it's kind of bad, like the things he did, the things he thought was bad, but at the same time I liked it just because it just added to his character more. And I know Stephen King does a really good job with making characters, building them, and also just sometimes what they do and don't do. I have finished this book and I just kind of want to do a couple spoilers. First off, I have a couple questions. What exactly was controlling the box? Was it aliens, so to speak, or was it something else? Also, how did Julia, when she was getting all these memories and she touched the box, or whatever happened to where the dome was being like sucked up and absorbed into the box apparently, and then being lifted wherever it went? I don't know. I have no clue about that ending. I'm very confused. I have a lot of questions. But when Julia was sitting there and this was all going on, how did she get Barbie's memories? Also,
who was she seeing? How was she the one that ended the dome crisis? Like, what did she do? Am I stupid, or did I miss something? Or is it just how Stephen King wrote this? I had another question. Maybe this was me. I think because I was a little bit busy, I was listening to the audiobook. I probably tuned some of it out because of what I was doing specifically. But there was also a big giant explosion with multiple tanks. And I feel kind of confused. How did that even start? I get the propane tanks exploding. That's fine. But how was it a chain reaction? Like, how did it start in the first place? And then that, I guess, is how the air quality got bad and we went into different areas. And then also, did Jim die? What happened to Big Jim? Did he actually die? Because the last I remember, I was reading about him seeing all the dead people and he was like screaming. Does that mean he died? Am I dumb? Again, I feel like I have so many questions, and I think it's either just me, especially me being sick, because I know my brain has slowed down a lot. For whatever reason, the sickness has like drained me completely, especially with my migraines going on. But at the same time, it's like, or is it not just me? Is it something how Stephen King wrote this? I don't know how many other spoilers I could really give. Kind of like the idea of Barbie and Julia being together in a way. I don't like the thing that they did. I kind of foresee them getting together a little bit towards the beginning, and I wasn't sure if maybe they did in the beginning. I couldn't remember at all, but I figured that towards the end they would start dating. But I also kind of thought that she was gonna die. I knew that Barbie was gonna live, but I thought she was gonna die. I thought her dog definitely was gonna die. I knew Big Jim was gonna die, at least in my mind. I was hoping Junior would. And then there were some other people who I just really thought they were gonna die too, and they lived, like Rusty and his wife, and I think his whole family lived. I'm really happy about that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad somebody made it out with a full family. But yeah, that is all my spoilers I think I have for this book. This was a behemoth of a book, and I'm glad I tackled it. I just also feel bad because I feel like I'm not going to be able to give so many spoilers because, or maybe good enough spoilers, because I have more questions than I do things that I'm concrete on. But I guess that's how it is when you read a Stephen King book.